Hey guys, White Kanzel going, and every night we're gonna try to analyze the most interesting game in the event. Today, I just chose the game between rising Russian young star Andrei Sipenko and MVL Maxime Vachier-Lagrave from France. Sipenko played e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes, and already opted for a very interesting opening choice. It's queen takes d4. Rarely seen move nowadays, especially in top level competitions. Usually it happens, when I said that, I mean in these strongest world tournaments. They happen in blitz and rapid competitions, but rarely in such top tournaments. It's called checkover line, and it leads to slight but long-lasting tiny advantages for white, because white just wants to play with some c4 type of positions. They just want to keep the game pretty solid, and for the rest of the game to grind down their opponents afterwards in tough positional battles. After 96, Sipenko opted for popular queen e3 move. I just need to tell you that this position divides into two different type of positions. Actually, three. Used to be popular, this bishop b5 move, and to be honest, when I saw today this game, I was expecting by him that he was gonna go with bishop b5. And after bishop d7, for example, I learned, I taught here a couple of my students to play this queen d3 line, including Chessable legend Eric Hansen, Grandmaster Zaich, and a couple other guys. And the idea is to all the time decide when is white gonna go with c4, knight c3, and to wait for black to do a6. And when he does a6, then you take on c6, getting like a pretty solid position. Another option could be bishop c6, and c4, which is not considered to be that crazy and special for white because of this pretty nice f5 move. And third option that used to be popular for the past 50 years was knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5, long castle. And here, white just wants to bring the rook into the center of the game, or not, depending on his choices in the lines. King b1, queen comes back to d3 or d2, knight comes back to d2, and then all of a sudden they just start to push this pawns on the king side. A relatively interesting line, and I have to be honest, for all these years, until the moment when I learned these lines, I used to have lots of problems with the black pieces exactly with this plan. After queen e3, Sipenko opted for a very popular line that Carlsen used in a rapid game back to, I believe, the end of 2020 against Svidler with the queen on e3. That queen on e3 also gives white two possibilities: to play at some point c4 and to go with some rook to d1 with an open b file. Also, there is one drawback of the queen on e3, especially the way he played. So after like knight f6, bishop e2, g6, castles, bishop g7, rook to d1. I insist on this. He hasn't committed himself yet with this knight, and hasn't committed himself with the c4 either. And he just wants to decide whether he wants to play knight c3 with or without c4. At the same time, queen on e3 should definitely be protected and secured by the h3 move. That's what Carlsen played against Svidler, and after h3 castles, rook d1, bishop e6, knight c3, moved the queen from the x raised by this rook, and after a3 to stop knight b4, Carlsen was a tiny better in the game against Svidler, but they eventually drew the game. Sipenko opted for rook to d1, and seemingly he threatens to play e5, but you can't do that because you haven't played h3. What does it mean? If he pushes e5, then knight g4, and then just because h3 hasn't been done yet, you have a knight g4 take, and afterwards to take on e5 pawn for free. So after knight c3, played bishop e6, a relatively interesting line. I would be very cautious with this move because usually when the knight stands on f6 and bishop on e6, white should jump with this knight on d5. I believe that an interesting possibility was knight b4, threatening fork, and after knight e1 to play bishop e6, followed by rook c8, and maybe to think about some d5 ideas, but most likely when white plays a3, he would just bring the knight back to c6 and control the center the way I just explained you previously. In the game was bishop e6, and Esipenko played knight d5. I would give an exclamation mark to this move, because it's a pretty annoying thing when you jump with this knight, because if ever, of course, that you cannot take by knight because of fork, and if you ever capture by bishop, white is gonna end up with two kinds of advantages. First of all, e-file is gonna be yours, and the e7 pawn for the rest of the game will remain weak. And second thing, you have the bishop pair. Actually, there is even a third thing in this position, which we call pawn majority, because he has 4 against relatively, I would say, saying that we have 2 or 3 pawns on the queen side, and white just has to push these pawns on the queen side afterwards. Of course, and we all played rook c8, he doesn't want to touch on d5 anything, and this guy played c3. Another relatively well-known and typical positional idea, which softens the diagonal and the importance of this bishop on g7. And here MWL plays in the typical dragon fashion rook e8. Why? He doesn't want to have this pawn hanging at some point on e7, and he just wants to release this queen and, for example, to put it on a5. Esipenko all the time played without h3, so he probably wanted to save some time. And the whole plan and this whole idea with the queen f4 and transposing the queen to h4 and playing bishop h6, in a way playing some sort of GPA type of attack followed by knight g5, would be relatively good unless MWL came up with the following idea. He played queen a5, and probably this was a critical moment for the game and for all of you who would like to apply this system with a white pieces. So check over line, modern system, 5th move, queen e3, that was used by Carlsen and this time by Esipenko. He was supposed to play knight g5, chasing away this bishop, and after bishop d5 he takes. You can't take on d5 because of queen f7, of course, and with check your knight is dying. So if you play like knight e5, queen goes on h4 with the bishop pair, untouchable pawns in the center. I'm talking about the pawn on d5. White certainly has better chances. He played queen h4, and I would say this is the only inaccuracy in this game. And if you're wondering why are we watching and analyzing this game from Black's point of view, it's because of the following situation, and because of the MWL is just a crazy tactician, and now you're gonna see what did he do, and I really enjoy that a lot. On the other hand, there is a nice coincidence. I'm actually wearing a t-shirt of Paris Saint-Germain, and the guy's from France. Anyways, queen h4 was in the game, and probably Esipenko thought, like, if the guy takes on d5, actually he could never do this because he just has this b4 move, removing the queen from defending the bishop on d5, and wins the piece. Believe it or not, MWL opted for this queen sack and played here bishop f3. Actually, the whole combination and the whole like queen sack happened after knight d5. So he had to see 6 moves in advance from here in such a complicated position. So for all of you who analyze, just to see how these top guys go in advance. So after knight e5, he takes bishop d5, b4, he sacrificed the queen with the bishop f3. What did he get in return? He got a pawn, bishop pair, and 2 pieces. Actually, he's got 2 pieces and pawn for the queen, but I'm talking about like a very powerful bishop pair in the game. Also, you have to consider that white had a broken pawn structure. After rook to d5, played bishop c3, rook b1, and played knight b4. Look at this nice harmony of the black pieces. I especially like this bishops on e2, c3, and knight on b4, open c file, and now beautiful move by Esipenko, who probably realized that if he doesn't take some urgent measures, he's gonna go under the fire here, and played rook to d4, threatening this knight, and sacking an exchange to relatively go into an easier position for him. After bishop d4, queen d4, knight c6, attacking the queen and defending the pawn. But after queen d5, now the b7 pawn was hanging, played bishop a6, solidifying his pawn structure. And when the dust has settled, we just have to say that the position is relatively equal. After bishop g5, knight e5, he's now threatening rook c5 to double these rooks and to take the initiative. And Esipenko played bishop e3, prevents rook c5 and threatens the pawn on a7. After rook c3, threatens rook to d3, and once again to go with either rook d3 or rook e c8, Esipenko played rook to b3. I believe this was an important moment of the game. The thing is, you can't play bishop c4 because he would just attack this rook with the tempo queen d4, for example, and played rook c2. Now he threatens bishop c4. Unfortunately, both of these guys were more or less satisfied with their positions, and they were absolutely uncertain about further continuation of the game if they just forced the matters. So after rook to b1, what he did in the game, played rook to c3 with the same idea, rook to b3, rook c2, rook b1, and MVL decided to push for a win, played rook e c8. Even engines claim that black has a tiny advantage after this rook doubling, but after h3 opens up the king so not to get mated on the back rank somehow. Rook 2 to c3 with pretty much the same idea, rook to b3 to stop that, rook c2 to threaten bishop c4, and played rook to b4 to prevent bishop c4, because in that case queen on b7 would be happening. After like couple of actually threefold repetition, they just agreed on a draw. I believe that this was a very nice game, an important theoretical battle, especially for that check over line and modern approach by white with the fifth move queen a3. And I also like the MVL's queen sac, so hope you enjoyed it, and see you soon. Bye bye.